Migos. Remember them? You know, that hip-hop trio that once had a massive part to play in the evolution of hip-hop. Everyone knew who they were a few years ago. But now we're looking back at possibly the saddest demise of any hip-hop group in the history of the genre. But let's start from the beginning. So, they formed in 2008 as a relatively unknown local hip-hop group, Quavo, Takeoff and Offset. The three rappers that we have always known to be Migos. It's just always been that way. They released 2 mixtapes but still didn't really have any recognition until 2013 arrived. That was when Migos dropped their breakthrough single, Versace. And oh boy, did it bring them to stardom. Drake performed at a festival. Yes, Drake, probably the most famous hip-hop artist in the world. He has been for years now. It's got them on the Billboard Hot 100 for the first time, and it helped put the triplet flow, later coined the Versace flow, into the mainstream, which defo benefited them in the long run. But we'll get to that later. But for now, it just got them on multiple end of year lists, end of decade lists in some cases, and numerous festivals. This really helped them get into the mainstream, trust me. One positively reviewed mixtape later, that being No Label 2, which included Fight Night, making it to 69 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it their best single at the time, and they were planning to make a 20-track full-length album, which was originally going to be a mixtape, called Young Rich Nation. In 2014, they then signed for 300 Entertainment, which was at the time a subsidiary of Atlantic Records. And on February the 5th, 2015, they released their first single from the album, that being One Time, which ended up getting to number 34 on the US Hot R&B/Hip-Hop Songs charts. However, the album would then be delayed. This is because at a gig they were performing at Georgia Southern University, they were all arrested, the trio and the other members of their entourage, for possession of marijuana, and this led to Offset being in custody for 8 months while the other two were released on bonds. Tour delays and album delays later followed. The album was eventually released, though, to fairly positive reviews on July the 31st. 2016 was their breakout year. They released 3 singles, one of them being this, Bad and Bougie, of their up-and-coming album Culture. They all ended up peaking inside the top 30, all 3 of the singles. However, Bad and Bougie ended up going to the top of the charts, being Migos' only number 1 single. And it ended up becoming a meme, with the lyrics raindrop, crop tops. Spoken and cooking, the hot pot cooking. You've defo heard this song somewhere, whether from a meme or just from listening to the song, because the music video's got over 1.1 billion views on YouTube. Eventually, they would release Culture in early 2017 to really, really positive reviews for the most part. And, everything was going on the up for them. This album made it to the top of the US and Canadian album charts and was certified platinum in the US. After that, they were featured on a Katy Perry and Steve Aoki song, and Offset and Quavo did collab albums with Metro Boomin and 21 Savage and Travis Scott respectively. But later on, the group would regroup to make Culture 2, which spawned 3 US top 10 singles and was their second consecutive number 1 album in the US. Now, there was only one thing for them to do, really, and that was to complete the trilogy, which they were meant to do in 2019, but due to it just not being finished and a goddamn pandemic, it was delayed twice. However, we were spoiled with solo albums from all of the Migos in 2018 and 2019 respectively. It would eventually release them, after rumours that there could even be a name change in 2021, where it reached number 2 on the Billboard 200. And it all seemed to be running like clockwork. And then 2022 happened, or more October 2022, where there were rumours that Migos had broke up because Offset got with Quavo's former girlfriend, and Quavo ended up mentioning that in one of his interviews and dissing him on a track on the album that he did with Takeoff, but not Offset, Only Built for Infinity Links, which released on October the 7th, 2022. It ended up reaching 7 on the US Billboard charts, and was a new start for Quavo and Takeoff as just a duo. But 25 days later, that was crushed after, during a game of dice, which Quavo was arguing with someone else about, someone shot Takeoff and killed him at the age of just 28. 25 days after release album, just 25 days prior, he was excited, dropping an album, thinking about how many he could do with Quavo, how good the albums could be with Quavo, how good his future in the music industry could be. And then there he was, just lying lifeless. Lying dead. Because of an argument over a game of dice that he wasn't even partaking in. But we've got to remember Quavo, who witnessed it, who will probably blame himself for arguing and causing him to die. But if you are blaming Quavo, you are a horrible human being. And I genuinely mean that. You can't expect someone to just come out with a gun and shoot his nephew, over a game of dice. If you genuinely think it's his fault, you do need help. But from last year, where all three of them were just dropping an album and everything looked fine, to this year, Offset's doing his own thing, Takeoff is dead, and now Quavo is probably going to disappear from the public eye, completely traumatised by watching his nephew die. And he will probably never forgive himself. And we may never hear of him again. From last year, where they were completing a trilogy of albums, to this year, with Offset living a completely different life, Takeoff not even having a life anymore, to Quavo, who we'll probably never hear of again. From the identity of Migos being in full swing last year to this year, it completely disappearing forever. All we'll have is memories of how it used to be. Good night.